have to be so authentically the role model and the example of confidence, self-forgiveness, kindness, fun, all of those things. You can't fake that. You want to model that for them. So all of that really shifted in the past 6 years of becoming a mom for me.
February 19th, 2026. The Crown strikes back in a way that shook headlines worldwide. Buckingham Palace released a rare and thunderous statement that exploded across global media. And welcome to Retrover. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe because we break down every royal twist like this. The message from the palace was direct and uncompromising. No member of the British royal family, past or present, shall be commercially leveraged without the consent of the sovereign. Any marital contract attempting to license the monarchy for profit will be reviewed, challenged, and publicly rejected. No exceptions. Behind that calm official wording was something way more personal and intense. It's now being confirmed that Princess Anne and Lady Louise Windsor quietly led a private review into the marriage agreement between Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and their spotlight landed hard on one specific section insiders whisper about. Page 14, Clause 7. So, what's the big deal with Clause 7? Sources who claim to have seen the document say it hands Meghan Markle full intellectual property control over Harry's personal story. Everything from books and interviews to documentaries and dramatic portrayals. According to these reports, Prince Harry would need written approval before speaking publicly about his own life. And the detail that shocked insiders the most? He allegedly signed the agreement without independent legal advice. That revelation alone raised serious eyebrows behind palace doors. Earlier this month, Princess Anne reportedly brought the findings straight to King Charles and Prince William during a closed-door meeting at Clarence House.
But it does come with pressure, and all you can do is make the best decision with the information that you have, and that's what I've been doing. And to trust your gut. I think that's so key.
Her delivery was steady, controlled, and cutting. As one insider described it, this didn't look like a normal marriage contract. It looked like a framework of control. She doesn't just own the house, she owns his past and even his silence. That's the chilling claim now, circling palace insiders. Lady Louise, who's been stepping up as a quiet but sharp voice inside the royal court, reportedly gave a blunt breakdown. She said Meghan's business empire wasn't built on random products or branding ideas. It was built on Harry's legacy, his trauma, his royal bloodline, and the memories tied to it. What makes this twist even louder is Meghan's past. Back in 2013, during her divorce from Hollywood producer Trevor Engelson, she was said to have taken a firm and strategic legal route. She hired a strong legal team, cut financial ties clean, and walked away without emotional drama. Court watchers at the time described her approach as precise, unsentimental, surgical, no chaos, just execution. Now the stakes are on a whole different level. Palace legal advisors reviewing documents claim Meghan reconnected with Sunshine Sachs, the powerful PR firm known for handling high-profile celebrity breakups. This is the same agency linked to Katie, Holmes' quiet split from Tom Cruise, and the strong media strategy during Angelina Jolie's separation from Brad Pitt. Insiders call their method exit engineering, not just ending a marriage, but controlling the entire public storyline. Princess Anne reportedly put it in direct terms. She said it's more than reputation management, it's calculated narrative strategy. And then came the most serious claim of all. Lady Louise stated there are credible concerns that deeply personal footage of Harry, filmed during vulnerable moments for Netflix, may not have been created just to amplify his voice. Instead, some fear it could serve as protective leverage if legal battles ever surfaced.
Because you're going to learn from it no matter what happens. But no, I feel confident in what I've been dreaming up for so long. I feel confident in the partner that I have. And I feel really proud of the team that I have. So that's not an option.
That claim alone has reignited attention around the Sussexes' 2021 Netflix agreement, raising intense questions behind palace walls. At the centre of it all sits a section reportedly titled Couple Alignment and Public Harmony. On paper, it sounds calm and harmless, but insiders claim it allows any marital breakdown to be framed through pre-approved storylines, like incompatible values or emotional instability, themes that echo the tabloid image that followed Harry for years. Lady Louise reportedly made it plain. This isn't just message control, this is turning his past into a strategic asset. With Clause 7 now under serious scrutiny, the Crown's posture has allegedly shifted from quiet observation to direct legal awareness. A confidential memo, said to be circulated by the Royal Legal Advisory Board, reportedly outlines potential risks Harry could face if divorce proceedings were ever initiated. Among the concerns listed, possible disputes over the Montecito estate if deemed shared property, and complications tied to business interests structured under Meghan's management. The memo also allegedly raises questions about custodial arrangements, given international residency factors, and the impact on Harry's ability to publish or speak about aspects of his royal past if contractual limits apply. There are even warnings about inheritance frameworks and title associations becoming legally complex should separation terms turn hostile. And because of Clause 7's reported wording, some fear Harry's ability to publicly respond could face contractual barriers. While the public focused on polished photo ops, podcast deals, charity events, and glossy Netflix scenes, Princess Anne and Lady Louise were, according to sources, mapping corporate filings and financial shifts dating back to 2022. Step by step, they track structural changes, brand expansions, and legal repositioning. What they believe they uncovered isn't just about marriage. It's about monetization at the highest level, and that realization could spark serious institutional reflection. What they say was uncovered behind palace doors wasn't simple financial independence. It looked like strategic separation, mapped out long before any public. Storm, Lady Louise's reported audit, submitted in late January 2026 to the Privy Council, allegedly detailed a steady shift in Meghan's professional identity, from Duchess to fully independent business operator. By the end of 2022, filings suggest her name, revenue channels, and brand assets were structured separately from anything jointly tied to Prince Harry. One of the biggest talking points was American Riviera Orchard, Meghan's lifestyle brand launched in April 2023. Corporate records show it was registered through a Delaware LLC, with no public indication of Harry listed in ownership documents. Trademark filings in the United States, UAE, and Singapore reportedly showed sole control, no shared authorship, and no direct royal branding references. In September 2023, a podcast agreement was signed naming Meghan as the sole creative producer and intellectual property holder. Around the same time, internal restructuring within Archewell in July 2023 allegedly adjusted financial access protocols and content approval processes, placing them under Meghan's legal oversight. By December 2023, according to accounts attributed to Princess Anne's review, Harry's public image remained central to the brand narrative. Yet structurally, he appeared less visible in operational control. But the detail that raised the most concern reportedly sits inside the couple's 2020 Netflix agreement, a provision referred to as Clause 11C, narrative rights transfer upon dissolution.
I want to make sure your needs are met. We're going to make sure you're comfortable. If something wasn't exactly as you imagined it, let's talk about it. How can we make you comfortable? All of that.
According to descriptions of the addendum, in the event of marital separation, jointly produced narrative material would be subject to review by a designated lead content manager. That clause, quiet and technical on paper, is now being viewed by insiders as a powerful pivot point in any future dispute. In direct terms, insiders claim the agreement suggests Meghan Markle would retain retrospective editorial control, while Prince Harry would waive those rights unless formally granted back to him in writing. Put simply, if a split ever happened, decisions about what content remains public and what gets pulled could rest in her hands. Lady Louise reportedly laid out a detailed timeline that stunned senior advisors. January 2022, Meghan incorporates Sapphire Crescent Holdings, a company later linked by analysts to overseas luxury licensing discussions. March 2022, Archewell's payroll structure is adjusted under legal supervision, and records allegedly show Harry's administrative role reduced in internal HR listings. June 2022, Meghan begins working with a separate PR agency for solo engagements, with press materials referring to her as Miss Markle. By October 2022, trademark filings tied to a revival of the TIG were submitted listing Meghan as the sole applicant. February 2023, reports indicate the purchase of more than $4 million in jewellery and product inventory categorised as founder assets under the Orchard brand structure. Then in August 2023, Her media representatives reportedly pitched a solo Vanity Fair feature under the headline "The Post-Royal Renaissance." As Lady Louise is said to have told the Privy Council, this did not look impulsive. It appeared methodical, a structured contingency plan built step by step. Even under California's community property framework, where marital earnings are often divided equally, legal analysts note that brand assets can be structured carefully. According to the review, certain provisions allegedly classified intellectual property and trademarks under pre-joint revenue entities, with communications routed through separate legal addresses rather than shared Sussex channels. On paper, everything looked clean and compliant, but strategically positioned for maximum control. Princess Anne reportedly called it the business version of a controlled detonation, polished on the outside, explosive underneath. What looked like polite contracts and smiling photo ops was, in her view, something far more strategic. Behind every glossy PR clip and carefully edited video teaser, officials now believe a complex legal web was tightening quietly. On January 12, 2026, Buckingham Palace allegedly delivered a sealed legal advisory directly to Prince Harry. The warning was not soft. It stated that his current marital agreement could place his financial holdings, narrative rights, and even future guardianship arguments in a vulnerable position. The recommendation was immediate legal review and structural revision before any public separation discussion ever begins. According to insiders familiar with the preliminary audit, now said to be under final assessment by the Royal Treasury, Harry's standing appears increasingly fragile. Reports claim he does not retain ownership over certain residual media assets connected to Archewell's past productions. There are also concerns that publishing new memoir material could require contractual clearance, tied to prior agreements. Even the Montecito property, purchased through joint lending arrangements, could face complex classification questions if courts deemed it shared marital property. When it comes to parental matters, analysts cited in the review allegedly noted that cross-border residency and scheduling patterns could complicate future custodial debates. No conclusions were drawn, but the memo reportedly stressed that preparation is critical in international family law cases. Lady Louise, according to accounts from the briefing, summarised the risk in stark language. Without proactive restructuring, Harry could be left with little more than his royal title and his personal history. Symbolic weight without operational control. What began as a quiet review of a single clause has, insiders claim, evolved into a sweeping examination of autonomy, financial, legal, and narrative. The issue is no longer just about one document. It's about who controls the story, the assets, and the future direction if circumstances change. Behind palace walls, the tone has reportedly shifted from curiosity to urgency. This is no longer treated as a distant possibility. It's viewed as a high-stakes chessboard, and every move from here could carry serious consequences. By mid-February 2026, one phrase was bouncing through royal corridors, legal offices, and media studios everywhere. Page 14, Clause 7. What was once brushed off as routine prenup wording from 2018 suddenly became the centre of intense debate. It wasn't until Lady Louise Windsor conducted a detailed audit of the couple's revised marital documents, cross-checking the language against California intellectual property law, that the weight of it reportedly came into focus. According to accounts of that review, Clause 7 granted Meghan Markle sweeping intellectual property authority over narrative material connected to Prince Harry's life. That allegedly included memoirs, interviews, unpublished letters, dramatizations, children's books, and even fictional works inspired by his royal experiences. The scope, as described by insiders, was broad and precise. In practical terms, critics argue this would mean Prince Harry could face contractual limits when speaking, writing, or licensing projects based on his own life story without written clearance.
Feels like a very smart way to do the full and complete storytelling of what I'm after. So, I feel flattered by the comparisons, and I feel excited that I'm sharing things that are important to me and how I would do things in my own home, and that I hope people translate that to theirs as well.
Lady Louise reportedly told the Crown's legal board that Clause 7 operated less like a safeguard and more like a binding editorial gatekeeper, formal, enforceable, and deeply embedded in legal structure. The reported timing also raised eyebrows. The clause was said to have been formalised in June 2020, shortly after the couple stepped back from senior royal duties and launched new ventures. It was a period marked by transition, public scrutiny, and major personal adjustments. During that window, Meghan allegedly secured unusually strong narrative approval language within the agreement. The wording, itself described as clinical and exact, allegedly stated that all present and future narrative content, public persona, depictions and emotional recollections related to the signatory HRRH, Prince Henry Charles Albert David, shall require approval by Party A. What once looked like fine print suddenly felt like the most powerful line in the entire document. Before any book hit shelves or any interview aired, Louise's review team reportedly dug deeper into the structure behind the scenes. While Archewell was publicly presented as a shared venture, corporate filings in Delaware allegedly outlined a management setup, giving Meghan primary voting authority over content deals and distribution partnerships. On paper, it looked balanced. In structure, critics say it leaned one way. In cases of internal dispute, default operational control would reportedly fall to the managing member, identified in filings as Meghan Markle. When Princess Anne was privately briefed, insiders say her reaction was sharp and direct. She allegedly remarked, "This isn't a marriage, it's a licensing agreement." The comment quickly circulated behind palace walls. Attention then shifted to Harry's 2023 memoir, Spare. Sources claim the manuscript underwent legal and narrative review before publication, with certain sections adjusted following internal discussions about consistency and tone. That's not unusual in major publishing deals. But under Clause 7, observers argue it takes on a different weight. If future projects were attempted, approval mechanisms could reportedly apply again. Palace aides, according to insiders, began quietly describing the situation in dramatic terms, saying Harry appeared contractually tied to the management of his own memories. Legal commentators reviewing the language of Clause 7 noted that it extended beyond current projects to include future portrayals and derivative works. If interpreted strictly, that scope could impact documentaries tied to his military service, podcast discussions about personal challenges, or even fictional stories inspired by royal life. Any such project might require formal clearance under the existing framework. For global observers watching the unfolding analysis, the implications felt massive. Not just about business, but about narrative power itself. A BBC legal commentator reportedly called it the most comprehensive narrative capture clause ever seen in a celebrity or aristocratic marriage. That statement alone sent shockwaves through media circles. Critics argue the structure effectively places control over Harry's past and any commercial version of it into managed oversight. Even Netflix executives were said to be caught off guard. According to reports referencing internal production communications, there was confusion about how narrative approval limits might affect future projects. One executive allegedly wrote, "He's the story and yet he can't tell it." That single line fueled intense debate across the industry. The Royal Intelligence Office, often referred to as RIO, reportedly identified an additional provision buried inside the couple's 2020 Netflix agreement, Clause 11TN, described as a narrative rights transfer upon dissolution. According to summaries of that clause, post-separation editorial authority over jointly produced Archewell content would rest with Meghan, and it didn't stop at released footage. The provision allegedly extended to joint interviews, behind-the-scenes recordings, unreleased material, and even private home-shot documentaries. Importantly, any references to family visuals involving minors would remain subject to strict legal protections and privacy law regardless of contractual terms. At that stage, palace officials reportedly viewed the situation as escalating. Lady Louise is said to have told the Sovereign Media Council, "We weren't just facing a narrative issue, we were witnessing the commercial structuring of royal history." Her wording was measured, but the concern was clear. The palace response followed quickly. By February 12th, King Charles allegedly ordered a pause on pending royal collaborations involving Harry. A temporary hold was placed on third-party content that could risk contractual conflicts. Behind closed doors, insiders claim the pressure on Harry felt overwhelming as legal realities collided with public perception. Aides close to Clarence House reported that Prince Harry requested a full private review of every document he had signed since 2020. What he allegedly uncovered left him, in the words of one royal secretary, completely hollowed out. And in that moment, insiders say a hard truth hit him. He may no longer have full control over his own voice. As legal experts debated the reach of Clause 7, pressure reportedly mounted around the Montecito estate. Once presented as a bold symbol of independence, the property suddenly became the focus of serious financial speculation. On February 13th, public records in Santa Barbara County showed filings tied to a property-related financial dispute. The headlines moved fast. At the center of the issue was a reported $9.4 million bridge loan connected to a Delaware-registered entity with international investors. According to financial sources, the terms were steep: a 14.25% interest rate, a 9-month maturity window, and strict repayment conditions. Reports claim a January 31st payment deadline was missed, placing the loan into default status. Behind closed doors, Meghan was said to have explored refinancing options through a boutique lending firm in Manhattan. However, negotiations allegedly stalled after due diligence reviews raised questions. Auditors examining Archewell's financial statements reportedly flagged classifications of certain public relations and security expenses under broader awareness campaign categories. While such classifications are not uncommon in non-profit structures, the scrutiny reportedly caused potential backers to hesitate. The ripple effects were swift. Archewell's podcast division was quietly scaled back. An internal industry memo later surfaced suggesting a planned follow-up Netflix docuseries had been shelved, citing performance metrics and broader reputational considerations. What had once looked like expansion and reinvention was now described by insiders as contraction under pressure. Financial strain, legal uncertainty, and public narrative battles were colliding all at once, and the situation appeared to be tightening by the day. What was once described as a $40 million content pipeline reportedly collapsed almost overnight, reduced, insiders say, to two sharp phrases: brand underperformance and legal volatility exposure. Deals that once looked locked in suddenly faded, and the unravelling no longer felt hypothetical. Reports also claimed the couple adjusted their household spending, their soupçon. Children were said to have transitioned from a high-cost private academy to a Montessori-style program. Financial observers noted it could simply reflect a lifestyle shift, but critics framed it as a sign of tightening resources. Around the same time, Meghan's fashion choices appeared more understated, favouring recycled and low-profile pieces. Public appearances became less frequent. Then her PR presence went quiet. Behind palace walls, another development surfaced. According to a leak attributed to Clarence House, Harry allegedly reached out to Prince Edward, not in an official role, but as family. Sources described him as unsettled and searching for clarity about his legal and personal standing. One palace insider claimed Harry asked during a private conversation, "Do my children even count as Windsors anymore?" That line, once whispered, quickly spread through media circles. Shortly after, Meghan released a carefully produced video from Montecito. The setting was warm and controlled. Ivory tones, candlelight, soft piano music in the background. She spoke about truth, resilience, and the feeling of a woman's voice being diminished. The message was calm, but the timing, just hours after property-related legal filings became public, sparked intense debate online. Within hours, the hashtag narrative hostage began trending worldwide. Major American networks picked up the story, shifting from soft coverage to sharper legal analysis. What had once been celebrity drama was now turning into a full-scale media storm, and the pressure was rising fast. Was Harry reduced to a side character in a carefully scripted life story? Had his personal journey been treated like content under contract, packaged and positioned for global platforms? Those were the questions circulating as speculation reached a boiling point. Royal officials, however, appeared ready to shift from whispers to visible signals. On February 14th, Princess Catherine, who had remained publicly silent on Sussex matters, stepped out at a children's welfare event in West London. Her appearance was polished but purposeful. She wore a navy coat and a subtle rose gold brooch shaped like a shield. Royal watchers quickly noted it was a newly designed emblem said to represent a Windsor child protection initiative aimed at reinforcing privacy standards for minors in media coverage. When reporters cautiously asked about recent headlines, Catherine responded with a calm but firm statement. Every child deserves a life free from exploitation. The Crown stands ready to protect that right wherever it's challenged. The comment was brief, but its meaning echoed loudly. Observers described it as more than a moral stance. It sounded like institutional positioning. Later that evening, online royal records reportedly reflected administrative updates tied to Sussex-related designations. Digital entries were adjusted in accordance with internal protocols, though no public ceremony or formal announcement accompanied the change. Palace analysts stressed that such updates can reflect structural or procedural revisions rather than personal judgments. Still, to many watching from afar, the symbolism felt heavy. The message coming from senior royals seemed focused on one theme above all else: safeguarding minors and reinforcing boundaries around how family narratives are presented in the public sphere. What started as contract analysis had now evolved into something larger, a debate over privacy, identity, and who ultimately controls the story when royalty and media collide. Back inside Buckingham Palace, King Charles, Princess Anne, and Prince William reportedly held a closed-door meeting that stretched for hours. By the end, sources say their view was aligned. Clause 7, as described in internal briefings, was seen as fundamentally incompatible with long-standing constitutional principles tied to royal identity and authorship. The monarchy, insiders claim, had no intention of leaving the issue unexamined. By the morning of February 15th, 2026, the response had shifted from quiet concern to coordinated institutional action. This was not framed as punishment, but as protection and clarification. At exactly 7 a.m, the Crown Archives Office reportedly activated a rarely used security protocol involving biometric vaulting procedures. The measure covered unreleased images, recordings, and voice data connected to royal minors, including archival portraits and any licensed third-party material stored under prior agreements. The stated objective, according to palace briefings, was to prevent unauthorized digital replication, AI modeling, merchandising, or dramatized reinterpretations involving minors. In an era of synthetic media, officials emphasize that safeguarding identity data has become a national security matter. Simultaneously, King Charles was said to have reviewed an appendix within the original marriage settlement referencing contingent custodial jurisdiction. That clause reportedly addressed documentation standards tied to royal registry recognition. Insiders claim discrepancies in record formatting, biometric filings, and cross-border documentation required administrative clarification before formal status could be reaffirmed under existing guardianship frameworks. The Lord Chamberlain's office then issued a procedural addendum linked to an earlier February 7th directive. Palace analysts stress that such actions reflect bureaucratic compliance reviews rather than emotional decisions. Still, the speed and coordination of the response signalled something unmistakable. What began as scrutiny of a single contractual clause had escalated into a full-scale institutional recalibration, one focused on constitutional integrity, data protection, and the long-term safeguarding of royal lineage in a rapidly changing media world. A formal directive reportedly stated that Archibald, Harrison and Lilibet Diana would no longer be referenced in connection with specific ceremonial privileges or institutional protections historically associated with the British Crown. The order, according to palace sources, was framed as permanent and grounded in national interest, ethical clarity and long-term legacy management. With that declaration, the boundary was set. Licensing approvals tied to commemorative items, including collectible porcelain, specialty books, archival prints, and certain digital assets, were said to be immediately suspended pending legal review. Trademark compliance notices reportedly went out to several US-based retailers advising caution around merchandise that referenced royal birth associations. In addition, data governance teams flagged biometric-linked digital datasets to prevent unauthorized AI replication or synthetic modeling. Insiders described it as the Crown building a legal firewall around its future. Across the Atlantic, observers noted a sudden quiet around Meghan Markle's Montecito residence. Her PR agency, Sunshine Sachs, issued no public clarification. Archewell's website remained unchanged. One visible adjustment did occur. Meghan withdrew from a scheduled Zoom appearance at a global wellness summit, citing unexpected scheduling complications. Back in London, Princess Anne, Prince William, and Lady Louise Windsor reportedly convened an emergency session with the Sovereign Legal Advisory Board. According to briefings, the group agreed that Clause 7 represented not only a contractual complication, but a reputational vulnerability. As Princess Anne allegedly put it, the monarchy cannot allow memory to become a subscription service. The remark was sharp and clearly intentional. Yet the most symbolic moment came later that night. As evening prayer bells rang through Westminster Abbey, the message felt unmistakable. This was no longer just about contracts or content rights. It was about legacy, sovereignty, and who ultimately safeguards the story of the crown. A new decree appeared in the sovereign record, short, sharp, and impossible to ignore. It stated that any future media, literary, or commercial projects seeking to use the name, likeness, or personal history of any royal, past or present, must undergo review and formal approval by the Sovereign's Office of Narrative Integrity. Non-compliance, the order warned, would trigger public repudiation and, if required, legal counteraction. That was the line in the sand. In the days that followed, digital platforms reportedly began making subtle adjustments. Netflix updated descriptive metadata tied to the Harry and Meghan docuseries, quietly removing certain phrasing. Spotify was said to have taken down promotional clips that referenced dramatized elements connected to Harry's earlier life. Industry insiders called it quiet compliance, fast and careful. Then came a development that shifted the emotional tone. Royal aides confirmed that Prince Harry had temporarily relocated to a secured Windsor guest residence, without Meghan and away from media presence. Sources say he requested a comprehensive review of every agreement he had entered into since 2020, with particular focus on narrative rights clauses. During a reported private walk on the Sandringham estate, he allegedly asked Lady Louise a question that cut deep. If I lost my story, do I still exist in theirs? According to those familiar with the exchange, her response was steady, not if you don't reclaim it. By February 16th, palace strategy had evolved beyond defence. At dawn, under sealed authorisation from King Charles, what insiders described as a sovereign narrative reclamation protocol was activated. A rare constitutional mechanism designed to reassess private agreements intersecting with institutional legacy. The monarchy was no longer reacting. It was redefining the framework itself and making clear that the story of the crown would not be outsourced without a fight. A formal palace notice reportedly stated that post-marital amendments connected to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were deemed incompatible with crown continuity principles. The declaration, said to be endorsed by Princess Anne and Prince William, clarified that any commercial venture, platform agreement, or private enterprise seeking to profit from the name, likeness, or historical experience of Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, would not receive crown recognition unless reviewed and formally approved under sovereign authority. That wording was strong and intentional. It is rare for the monarchy to issue language that direct, but insiders claim Clause 7 was viewed as a tipping point. By that evening, a high-level summit reportedly convened behind closed doors at Clarence House. King Charles, Princess Anne, Prince William, and Prince Edward gathered around a detailed briefing file labelled Clause 7, Exploitation Risk and Institutional Containment. According to sources familiar with the dossier, it included timelines of intellectual property registrations and trademark filings, structural reviews of Arkwell's corporate governance, and documentation reflecting shifts in operational oversight. There were also assessments of external crisis communication strategies and how narrative framing can shape public sympathy during high-profile disputes. Princess Anne, as described by attendees, spoke with blunt clarity. "This is not simply a family disagreement," she reportedly said. "It touches institutional dignity." Prince William echoed that tone, emphasising that narrative authority and silence carry equal weight in public life. The final phase, insiders say, involved direct consultation with senior palace legal counsel. Their recommendation focused on reinforcing constitutional safeguards while avoiding personal escalation. By the end of the night, one message was unmistakable. The institution would not permit its legacy to become a negotiable asset. The boundaries had been redrawn, and this time, they were backed by full sovereign authority. According to reported internal findings, Meghan had secured an editorial provision extending beyond past events to include future portrayals that allegedly covered Harry's reflections on royal customs, family loss, and even his public service record. Some legal analysts reviewing the language suggested that fictional works inspired by his lineage could also face contractual challenge. The reach, they said, was wide and strategic. At 11 p.m, a draft counter clause was reportedly circulated within palace legal circles. Its purpose was bold: to neutralise Clause 7 by asserting sovereign override authority over any material derived from royal duty, institutional service, or crown history. In simple terms, the monarchy was signalling it would reclaim institutional authorship where it believed. Constitutional identity was involved. By February 17th, visible steps followed. The Royal UK Media page updated its public guidelines, stating that Sussex-originated content referencing royal residences, ceremonial traditions, or family history would include a disclaimer clarifying non-affiliation with the Crown if not officially sanctioned. A formal notice reinforced what officials described as institutional narrative ownership, particularly over state ceremonies, insignias, and service-related history. Global media reacted fast. One headline declared, "The monarchy rewrites the script." Commentators noted that the dispute now appeared less personal and more constitutional. Observers pointed out that if sovereign authority applied, neither private contracts nor outside parties would retain unilateral control. Streaming platforms adjusted accordingly. Netflix updated its series description to read, "based on independently submitted materials," while internal tags referencing Crown affiliation were reportedly removed. Spotify paused re-releases of certain archetypes' promotional clips. Amazon was said to have quietly delisted a pre-release memoir titled The Spares Crown, rumoured in publishing circles to be a companion project tied to future content plans. By nightfall, the message felt unmistakable. This wasn't just about one clause anymore. It was about who ultimately controls history when royalty meets global media power. Then came total silence. No statements, no social posts, no glossy updates. Observers described it as a full media blackout. Sources in California claimed several of Meghan's team members were quietly reassigned to undisclosed projects. Sunshine Sachs made no public comment. But inside palace walls, movement was steady and deliberate. Prince Harry, now temporarily staying at Windsor, was reportedly meeting with a small legal advisory group led by Lady Louise Windsor. According to one close aide, his mood had changed. More serious, more focused, almost lighter in a strange way. During a February 18th debrief, he allegedly told Princess Anne, "I signed to protect her, but I never thought I'd have to protect myself from what I signed." Anne's response was said to be brief and firm. "Then let this be the chapter where you take your name back." At 5:30 p.m. that same day, the palace made its boldest move yet. A new statement appeared on the royal family's official website. It read, "The Crown does not recognise any personal contract that attempts to silence royal lineage. The Windsor legacy shall not be licensed. It shall be lived." The words were sharp, measured, and unmistakable. Media outlets reacted instantly. One headline called it the most refined institutional rebuttal in recent royal history. Another network framed it as a shift from silence to sovereignty. Online, hashtags surged. Hashtag Clause 7 voided. Hashtag Take Back the Story. Hashtag Windsor Firewall. The digital world lit up. And then came the image that sealed the moment. On the morning of February 18th, Princess Catherine stood outside a children's advocacy centre, calm and composed. No dramatic speech, no direct references, just presence. In royal strategy, sometimes the loudest message is delivered without raising a voice. Holding the hands of Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and little Lilibet, Princess Catherine stood calm and steady on the steps. Lilibet, shy and close at her side, wore a navy coat with a matching headband. It was simple, intentional, powerful. Behind them, photographers were instructed to take only one wide shot. No close-ups, no shouted questions, just one image. There was no formal press conference, no dramatic speech, only a quiet caption posted by the palace. A story doesn't belong to those who write it, it belongs to those who live it. That line hit hard. The monarchy had answered, not with chaos, but with control. Not with noise, but with sovereignty. The so-called narrative prison was over. The Windsor firewall had held strong, and while Meghan may still hold a pen, the page is no longer hers alone to publish. If you've been following this entire saga, drop your thoughts below. Do you think the Crown made the right move? Like this video, subscribe for more deep dives, share it with anyone tracking this story, and comment your take, because this chapter may be closed, but the conversation is just getting started.